Hello everyone and welcome to the Cosmic Convention, the Pickles Parker Podcast where we talk about the greatest show in the galaxy, Doctor Who. Now today I'm joined by my friend Max. Say hello, Max.
Hello.
Now Max is someone I go to school with and is about one out of about 4 people I actually know who like Doctor Who.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not particularly popular at our school,
not
really.
A big fan base.
No, not a big fan base.
Church, was
No, not at all. I brought him on today to talk about Doctor Who. And me and Max, we have a bit of a podcast history, don't we, Max?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, because I went on your podcast.
On my old podcast with me and Declan back in December or whenever that was.
I went on the Alito podcast, and then
the
episode never went out, and shortly after the podcast folded, so I don't know what that says about me. But, hopefully
I thought it went out. Did we not put that one out?
No, it never went out.
You were on with Mason, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, and it never went out. You streamed it.
We lost the file.
Yeah.
It was
And then the podcast never made another episode since. Hopefully this podcast lasts a bit longer. But just I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions, Max. How did you get into Doctor Who, Max?
How did I get into Doctor Who? That is a good question. I guess I saw it on BBC One. I guess around Series 5, Series 6. I started watching it.
It's similar for me. At a similar time. I know I started watching towards the end of Series 6. Which is quite interesting because a lot of people say that would be the worst series to jump on because you've got the Ark and stuff.
In the Moffat Ark,
which is obviously dominates quite a lot of that series. Yet somehow I got in and enjoyed it, despite the fact that I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I was 7.
Yeah.
But so you got on around Series 5. And
I guess I started watching about Series 5. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's kind of on that BBC One. It was hard to miss.
Yeah, true. The marketing is obviously quite big for that era. I guess it's something we don't it's something we don't really see now. We haven't really seen since kind of early Capaldi. Is that big marketing push?
The big marketing effort. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the BBC have kind of tried to bury it. I think
they've kind of dropped back on it. I guess.
Yeah, there was actually quite a big marketing push for Series 11.
There was for Series 11, I think. Yeah, when Whittaker joined. I remember seeing a lot of it on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, but for
advertising.
For Series 12, I think they really... I did not see any promotion for it that wasn't on the official Doctor Who Twitter account, which if you're following that, you're already watching Doctor Who, so it kind of felt a bit weird that they were marketing it to already fans of the show.
That's true. I think it kind of encompasses in all these cuts to the BBC and all this stuff.
Well, absolutely. And I guess it is. I think also, obviously, the viewing figures haven't been great for this series, especially when.
I guess they've been dipping, yeah.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to Series 11. And I do think that obviously there is some correlation with the marketing because, I think it was similar with Series 10. People said no one was watching it because there just wasn't any marketing for it. So I guess it's a bit strange from the BBC because obviously you've spent all this money on it, so you just as well market it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, they've developed all these series and then it's not marketed. I think it's a great shame because you have quite a lot of good, especially in Series 12. You've got quite a few good episodes in there. Really good
exactly.
They're not being marketed.
I almost find it's actually quite similar to Series 10. How they brought back a lot of past elements to try and get people to watch the show again. So in Series 10, they brought back John Sim, so to say fans of the Tennant era, come back because John Sim's in it. And I guess they did similar thing with the Jadoon and Captain Jack in this series, but it just didn't really seem to work in terms of viewers, I guess.
That's the thing that irritated me about Series 12, though. You had this fugitive of the Jadoon episode. And it's leading up to all these things. And you have the Captain Jack. I thought they were going to do more with Captain Jack, is what did annoy me. Yeah,
it just seems like he was just kind of there just to say...
He was kind of just a marketing figure, is how I viewed it.
He didn't really have a purpose there.
Yeah, he comes in for the 1-minute cameo, and then he's gone, isn't it? And you have that scene with Graham and all the rest of it.
It feels very out of place in the story as well. Like him setting up the Cyberman stuff, which I was thinking about. Like a lot of people said, like you could have had a different character delivering that stuff. But I don't even really think you need to set up the lone Cyberman thing at all, really.
I don't think you need to set up it at all, because he says, don't give it what it wants, and then you get to episode 8 and it gets what it wants.
Yeah, the Doctor
so what's
doesn't
the point
really
of this whole arc?
Yeah, the Doctor doesn't take his advice into consideration. The Doctor didn't even speak to Captain Jack, so why did you need to set that up? It just feels a bit weird. I think Fugitive of the Jadoon is like that as well, because like you didn't need to have the Roof Doctor in there to set up the Timeless Child stuff, because it doesn't really like you don't need her, because it's not very clear if she's like a doctor before Hartnell or whatever. So it feels like a very weird setup in that episode. I guess I wasn't really a big fan of Fugitive of the Jadoon at the time. It kind of felt like a very messy episode. Like it was just a lot of setup. But I think especially when like a lot of that setup didn't really go anywhere.
It didn't go anywhere, no.
It makes that episode even worse in hindsight. Because,
and this kind of all builds up to this cameo in the finale. Yeah, it's just not.
Yeah, I imagine they might do more with her in the future, but for this
I hope
series,
they do more with the Captain Jack as well. Now that they've brought him back, I hope he gets at least an episode,
Oh, there's a lot of rumours. I think it's all but confirmed that he's going to be in the special. So I guess that's good. He'll actually get to interact with the Doctor then.
I guess there's more room for him to come in, because it's Graham and Ryan are going, aren't they, for the next season?
Yeah, that's my only worry, because it's probably only going to be a 60-minute special. You're going to have Captain Jack in it, the Daleks, Graham and Ryan leaving, and then you've got the stuff with the Doctor in prison. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. It might be a bit overstuffed, I guess.
I think that was this season in general, though, just overstuffed.
Yeah, it was.
There's a problem with, in episode 9, where you've got, it keeps coming back to these flashbacks or whatever it is. And there's nothing that gets explained until you've got about 20 minutes, and it's interrupting the main story, the whole thing on the cyber ship or whatever. And it doesn't get explained until Timeless Children, and then it's not really explained very well.
No, it's not really relevant either, because it's said that the Doctor got those flashbacks. Like, those were visions she was having, but that wasn't very clear in Ascension of the Cybermen at all. I think that's
nothing. Ascension of the Cybermen is the most confusing episode of the series. It's just terrible.
I think I think it's a problem with like this series and a lot of episodes is that there's just a lot of like different storylines and they don't really gel at all. I think that was my big problem with the Timeless Children, like setting aside like what the Timeless Child actually was. Like the Cyberman plot and the Master stuff on Gallifrey with the Timeless Child, it doesn't really connect at all.
Yeah.
Really. And like you said, it's the same with like the Brendan visions, it's the same in Fugitive of the Jadoon. Like the Captain Jack stuff just feels so disconnected to the rest of the episode.
It's odd. And then you've got this, I don't know if it was in Spyfall or whatever, but you got this where the Master goes, oh yeah, Gallifrey's destroyed, and it doesn't come up until episode 10.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like it's a pushing point for the plot. And again, it's not great.
Yeah,
it's not great at all.
I think that's the thing, is that my main problem with this series, or one of my issues, was that the arc isn't well threaded across the series. It's like, rather than like a little bit of the arc be in every single episode, in this it's like you get episodes where the arc isn't in it at all, and then the episodes where the arc is present, it's so arc heavy.
It's in your face, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So it almost feels like, because there was a lot of criticism from Series 11 of there not being an arc, I feel like Chris Chibnall was just like, yeah, I'll do an arc, but he's clearly not the right... I don't think it suits his writing strengths, because I think that's pretty clear. It's probably why he didn't do one in Series 11, because he's just not... Yeah. I'm not going to say not a good enough writer, but it's not his strength, I wouldn't say, to write a series arc. Like with Moffat, clearly he like loved writing the arcs, like that was like his mission statement.
Yeah, that was his thing with the writing.
Whereas with Chibnall, I almost feel like he's been forced to do an arc just because that's what people wanted, and I think that's why it hasn't been well implemented across the series.
I think Moffat did it well with, series 5 and 6, and and even in the first episode of season 5, and it's just it builds up nicely.
Set up in the 11th hour. I think also while I'd say that, I think certainly in the Smith era, I think Moffat knew what he was doing. I think in some of the
Smith, he did better in the Smith era than he did in the Capaldi era.
Yeah, I think with the Capaldi era, you could clearly see that he kind of ran out of ideas and he was just kind of recycling a lot of his old ideas. Which I guess it's like in anything, when you if you were to start writing, when you first start writing, if you're like a Doctor Who fan, or if you're a Doctor Who writer, like Moffat had been working on the show for a while, like in your head, you're gonna have planned in your head what you would do if you were showrunner. So that's why I think with Series 5, it's so good, because Moffat had clearly planned that out, maybe for years, of what he would want to do if he was showrunner, and he's put all his
ideas. And that's why it's also well led through, even Series 5 through 7, you've got Trenzalore and everything, and it's well done. And he knows what he's doing ahead of time.
I'd say it is well done. I think there are some instances when you can see maybe that doesn't quite make sense, or there are plot holes with everything.
And you do have episodes which are subpar and all the rest of it, but I think he's done better in general.
Yeah, I think you could certainly say that even if some of the arcs didn't necessarily work 100% of the time
perfectly, at least he's made the effort here.
Yeah, I think you could see, especially in the Matt Smith era, that there was passion in those story arcs. He clearly wanted to tell those stories, whereas I think in the Capaldi era, he was just kind of running on empty, especially when he tried to leave a number of times and he just couldn't. He tried to leave after Husbands of Riversong, and the BBC were like, we don't have anyone to take over, so you've got to stay on. So he stayed on for Series 10, and they tried to leave after Dr. Fools, and then they were like, well, Chris Chibnall doesn't want to do a Christmas special, so they had to stay on do the Christmas special. And
he had to do Twice Upon a Time as well,
So it's
he's just hanging on for all these episodes. And you can see it in season 10, that he's, the writer's on his way out, just like...
Yeah, exactly.
So I think season 10 is up there with the worst seasons of the series. This isn't saying anything against Moffat or anything like that, but it's not...
That's interesting, because I'd probably say that Series 10 is Capaldi's strongest series. I think I'd say so. I feel that, well, for me, Capaldi's weakest, I wouldn't say the weakest series in the entirety of the show, but my least favourite series in the entirety of the show would be Series 8.
You think Series 8, yeah. I saw this on your Twitter. You're not a fan of Series 8?
No, I'm not a fan of Series 8. I just feel that there's a lot of very bad episodes, and I'm just not a fan of the Doctor-Clara relationship.
I don't like how, how Clara kind of becomes the main character, and it's revolved around Clara and what's his name?
Danny Pink.
Danny Pink, yeah.
Oh,
and he's the whole arc for even the Christmas special last Christmas. It's covered with Danny Pink. I think it's too Clara focused.
Yeah. I just think Clara just isn't a particularly likable character, and I think at the time,
I think she stuck around for too long.
Yeah, absolutely, because she was supposed to leave at the end of Death in Heaven, and then she said, "Actually, no, I want to stay on for Last Christmas," and then she was supposed to stay. No, she was supposed to leave, at the end of Last Christmas, and then she said, no, I want to stay on for Series 9. So then...
And what it ends up is in New Who, Clara has been on for, if you count the Captain Jack kind of tease, not really, but she's been on for longer than any other character, continuously.
Continuous. Because obviously she just beats Amy and Rory, I think, by a couple of episodes.
Amy and Rory, because Amy and Rory only do half of Series 7.
She does. She has more episodes. She has more episodes.
She does 9 in Season 7 as opposed to them doing 5. But and she does the whole of Series 8, the whole of Series 9, and she's almost at the level. Well, she obviously does more than Eccleston, but she's almost at the level of any other Doctor.
is
in terms of episode filmed, and she's got all those specials in whether it's season 7 or the
obviously she appeared in like Asylum of the Daleks as well, so she's appeared in a lot of stories. I just feel that I think it's improved. Their relationships improved in Series 9, but I just think in Series 8 it's like the Doctor and Clara, it's such a toxic relationship between them that they just like Clara just hates Capaldi. Well, not Capaldi,
especially in like Mummy and the Orient Express and things like that. And there's just
I think
there's just this element of her wanting to leave. And
like
this whole teaching
in Kill
thing.
the Moon when they have that massive rant, and then in Into Dalek when she just slaps the Doctor. I think, especially when I was younger, because obviously I'd gone back and watched Eccleston and Tennant, but Smith to Capaldi was like my first like live changing over from a Doctor. And I was because I was quite young, I was quite sceptical of the Doctor being old, because all I kind of knew was the Doctor being young. And you see him
run, and it's just comical, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think because the episode makes such a point, like Clara keeps on going on about how he's so old, and the fact that even throughout most of the series, she treats the Doctor like he's a different person to Matt Smith. I just felt like, at the time, that really soured my view of Capaldi when I was watching it back in 2014, because the series was making such a big point of how he wasn't like Matt Smith, and Clara was just treating him like he'd like up and murdered her family. I just think it wasn't a great relationship to me.
I could see it being fine for like a couple episodes after the regeneration, like they did in the Christmas special when Eccleston left. But it's dragged on for the whole season into Mummy on the Orient Express and further after that, so it just shouldn't go on that long.
I think it's like in Deep Breath when Clara goes into the TARDIS and Capaldi's in his new clothes. Like, that's kind of the point where you're like, you've done the regeneration trauma, he's now the Doctor.
It's over now.
Yeah, and then she just says, I don't think I know who the Doctor is anymore. And it's like, if she doesn't know who he is, how do you expect a young viewer to connect to the Doctor when your companion clearly does not connect to him throughout the whole of Series 8? I just feel like that relationship really sours Series 8. And also, I just don't like a lot of the stories in it. I understand.
It's a shame because you got some good episodes in season 8, and it's been ruined by like Listen and
Listen.
I
think Mummy on the Orient Express, actually, regardless of the Clara stuff, I think is actually a very good episode.
I think it's the best episode of the season.
And I think Flatline is quite good as well.
Flatline I like a lot. Flatline,
But
it's one of the episodes where I do accept the kind of Clara being the main character. But if it was just that one,
it's very weird because in a series where Clara infuriates me, it's weird that the one episode that really centers around Clara, I actually don't mind her. It's very weird how they do that, but I think it works.
And the Caretaker as well. That's a bit of a controversial episode, isn't it? But,
I don't know what I think about the Caretaker, actually, because I'm not really a fan of like the Clara, Doctor, and Danny stuff.
Yeah.
I just think the Doctor just hating soldiers overall in this series and this series only. It's just a very weird thing.
Yeah.
That he just has this random prejudice against soldiers. I'm not really sure why.
And this whole rant at Danny Pink, and
it's like he doesn't have a massive thing against soldiers before this, and he doesn't have it after this. So why in this one series?
Yeah, but it's only in the Danny Pink arc because it's
And like in Into the Dalek at the end, when he rejects like the person, like the girl soldier who's with them, like purely on the basis that she's a soldier and no other reasoning at all. It makes him feel really prejudiced, and it's just I think Capaldi's characterization overall is quite weird in Series 8. I think maybe that's why I enjoy Series 10 a bit more, because I feel like they really nailed down his Doctor. It was just a bit too little too late, unfortunately.
I think the Doctor himself was a lot better in season 10.
Yeah.
But
I almost fear that's what we're going to get with Jodie Whittaker, that she's going to be quite good in Series 13, but unfortunately that's going to be a bit like...
It's going to be too little too late, because she might stay on for 14, but I don't think she's going to do much more than that, because I don't think they're going to want to see her do too many more seasons than
I think because
Smith and Capaldi.
Especially because of how long in between the series it is.
It's never every year now. It's never put out a series every year.
And especially because of lockdown as well. Like that's going to halt Series 13.
That's going to put the schedule down by months.
And I imagine she'll probably have played the Doctor the longest out of all the new series Doctors. Not because of series, but just because of the gaps between
how
the series.
long it takes and lockdown and all the rest of it. Yeah,
I think when obviously it started in 2009 with the specials, but when you really started to get the infrequent series, I guess was with Matt Smith when you've got Series 7 split in two and over 2 years.
Yeah, and there was the massive gap, and
then obviously in 2016 there just wasn't a series. Same with 2019. I guess it's probably down to budget cuts as well.
It's budget cuts, and there was a problem with Capaldi where they were filming 8 months a year, and he didn't want to do it, and that was.
Well, it's quite a commitment.
I think that was what led to him not doing the 4th season. But yeah, it is. It's because you see their pay, and they don't get paid because it's a public thing on the BBC, and it's about for Jenna Coleman and Peter Capaldi, it was about 150, which is you think it'd be more than that for doing the Doctor full time.
The amounts that they do,
and they're doing 7-8 months a year, so
yeah, exactly. I guess we've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent, really, but I want to ask, who is your favourite Doctor, Max?
Who is my favourite? That's a good question. I think. In terms of who I've watched the most, it'd be Capaldi, because that's when I was really kind of getting into the series. But in terms of my favourite Doctor, I think it's got to be Tennant.
Yeah, that's fair. For me, it's Matt Smith. Yeah, I just think, I guess when you first watch a Doctor, I guess for me, you're kind of comparing every other Doctor you see against that Doctor, because that's kind of the default Doctor in your head, at least for me. I guess it's just something about Matt Smith for me where even if it's a subpar episode, he slightly improves it, I guess. I think that's why I enjoy a lot of 6 and 7, which I know some people aren't big on, but I just feel Matt Smith elevates, especially Series 7, I think he elevates a lot of those stories higher than they would be with another Doctor. I think at least for me, because I like his Doctor so much, but...
I thought season 7 was quite good, to be fair, but it's certainly got its bad points.
I think Series 7 is just quite weird overall because it feels like two completely different series because the
split in two, and then
because he gets a new costume, a new TARDIS, new companion, a new title sequence in 7B. It's it feels like a complete different series to 7 Part 1. Where it's just
and you've got some odd episodes, like Asylum of the Daleks being one, and Power of Three being another.
Yeah, written by
Chris. And then you've got Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS.
Yeah, Nightmare in Silver, I'm not big on at all. I think that's a very strange episode. It might be my least favourite Matt Smith episode, actually. I'm just not big on
Nightmare
in
Silver.
Yeah, Nightmare in Silver. I'm just
Fair enough, I guess.
On that one.
That was certainly an odd one. I think my least favourite would have to be Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, to be fair. But,
that used to be my least favourite Smith story. I actually watched it a couple of months ago. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I had previously, so that's kind of gone up a little bit in my estimations before. But I understand why people dislike it. I think it's quite a weird episode in the sense that you don't really see much of the TARDIS, even though that's kind of what it was marketed around. You've got those 3 annoying brothers there.
And one's the android and all the rest of it.
It's that weird android twist that does nothing, and they're not great actors and stuff. It's quite a weird episode, but again, I think Matt Smith kind of elevates that one a bit for me. I just enjoy in that story.
I think he does that with a lot of episodes, just because kind of his lightheartedness and the humour of it. But
I guess that's one of the reasons, in particular, I wasn't the biggest fan of Series 11, because while a lot of people could argue that some Series 7 episodes are similar in quality to Series 11, I just feel that Matt Smith elevates those stories, whereas with Jodie Whittaker, because, especially in Series 11, her characterization is quite weak. She doesn't really make much of an impression on the viewer, so it's very hard for her to elevate any of those stories.
She's not really. The most out there character, as confirmed.
And then obviously you've got the three companions as well, and she's not really front and center in that series. I'd argue that she only really comes into
it's
her
kind of
own
Graham that's
12.
front and center in that series in a way.
I think one of their because Chris Chibnall says he doesn't read reviews, but he clearly does, because Series 12 improved on a lot of things from Series 11. The Doctor being one of them. I think they gave Judy Whittaker a lot more like darker things to do, which I think was necessary, because her Doctor in Series 11 is just like happy-go-lucky. A lot of people have compared her to a children's TV entertainer, which I think is quite a fitting description. It almost seems to me like someone writing her like Tennant and Smith, but not actually realising what makes Tennant and Smith so good, which is that they're quite complex characters, and like they're quite quirky, and then in an instant they can switch to being quite dark, which I think why the Doctor's such a good character is because the Doctor's always been quite a complex character, whereas with Jodie...
And you have that with all of them, and Capaldi, and
with Capaldi,
you know, they can go from light-hearted to being just cold.
Yeah, whereas in
you don't
Series
really get that with Whittaker.
No, not in Series 11. I think they certainly improved on that.
Series 12 has done better,
and that's why I kind of believe that she'll be quite good in Series 13, but it just will probably be a bit too little.
It'll be interesting what happens with no Graham and no Ryan.
Yeah,
it'll certainly be interesting.
I think with less companions, she'd have more time to shine.
More time to thrive on the screen.
Yeah, and I think also that you could really have her build up a relationship with just one companion, because I don't really feel like she has that with any of the companions, really. Like a good relationship. I can't even really remember any like iconic 13 and Ryan scenes, for example. Like, what kind of relationship did they have?
13 and Yaz, and it's not really there, is it?
No. I think she has some funny scenes with Graham, but I think
with Graham, certainly he's been like the dominant companion thus far, because you have the Series 11 arc with kind of the Grace arc, and it goes on for the whole season basically. You talk about arcs dragging on for too long, but
exactly. I think maybe that was one of the main reasons for Series 11's failures, that you didn't have an arc, but then again, you didn't really have anything else going on. Like, you had that character arc with Graham and Ryan, but the Doctor was quite static across that series. Like, she didn't really do much, and Yaz was practically invisible.
And it was all about Graham and Ryan, and less about Yaz and the Doctor.
Yeah, I guess that's good. It's kind of similar to my problem in Series 8, really, when you put a lot of focus on the companion in a Doctor's debut series. It really hurts the development of that Doctor.
Well, you got the major series of Peter Capaldi, and you're going on about Danny Pink for the whole season.
Exactly. I think maybe one of the reasons was because I heard that Moffat presumed that Matt Smith would stay on for Series 8, and then he obviously didn't. I think that may be one of the reasons why a lot of the stuff in Matt Smith's era is all tied together in Time of the Doctor, because he thought he'd have another year to kind of play with those things, and then obviously Matt Smith left, so he kind of hurriedly tied them all together in that episode. He said he wanted to see Matt Smith's Doctor become darker, so I guess it would have made more sense for that whole "Am I a good man?" thing, rather than it being like Capaldi, he's just regenerated, and then all of a sudden he's saying that he doesn't think he's a good man and stuff. It's a bit... And obviously it would make more sense why it would be a Clara-dominated series, because you've already got the Doctor established there. And the fracturing between the 11th Doctor and Clara, I think, would just make more sense than the fracturing between Clara and a whole new Doctor, which I don't think works for their first series at all, really.
Yeah.
So you want to give that Doctor the time to shine. I just don't think Series 8 or 11 really does that. I'd actually argue Series 2. I'm not the biggest fan of Series 2, because what I've been doing is, since lockdown, I've been rewatching all of the revived series in chronological order. And I'm partway through Series 5 at the moment, which is just... I love Series 5, but something I noticed is that I thought that Series 2 was quite a weak first series for Tennant. I think that he only really comes into his own in Series 3, which I think he's great in 3 and 4, and I think Series 3 and 4 are a great series. But I think Series 2 it's quite a weak series, especially when you put it into context where it's surrounded by Series 1, 3 and 4.
Again, you think about companions, it's very Rose-focused,
Season 2. It is. I just feel that Tennant, he almost doesn't feel amazingly comfortable until he loses Rose. I even think in The Runaway Bride, when he's with Donna, It's like he's instantly more comfortable in the role than he is in Series 2, which is something I only noticed on rewatch, because I never noticed that before. I always thought Tennant was quite good from the off, but I think he does take a little bit of time to find his Doctor. Whereas I think with Matt Smith, it's like almost instant in the 11th hour.
Yeah, he was straight into, the confidence and all the rest of it in Series 5.
Yeah.
And very early in Series 5. And you can say the same for Chris Eggleston. But,
yeah, exactly. I'd say Eccleston is like almost immediate that he's the Doctor. He kind of had to find his feet very quickly.
Yeah, with it being the revival.
Yeah, because obviously if he'd failed, then the show probably wouldn't still be on the air today. They probably would have cancelled it after one series.
Yeah, and I did also rewatch. I started to rewatch. I rewatched season 1. It's such a shame that Eggleston didn't stay on and do a bit more, because he did a great job in that one season, especially with some of the bad stories in season 1 with Aliens of London.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Aliens of London. I think.
Yeah, no.
To me,
I'm not a fan of it. It just seems a bit bizarre to me, to be honest.
It's kind of the only real story for me that kind of lets Series 1 down. Like, all the others kind of range
I think
from
Dalek is
Dalek's
you got some really good episodes in there, yeah.
I think a lot of even some of the more like meh ones, like The Long Game and Boomtown, I still think they're like decent to watch, whereas with Aliens of London, it's the only real story where I kind of just think that's not very good, really.
No, yeah. And again, you got the standalone episodes, like the one with Charles Dickens. That was very good.
Yeah, I'm Quite Dead is good. And I think that obviously Empty Child, Dr. Dances, that's good. As you said, Dalek's good. I quite like Father's Day, and then obviously the finale is good as well.
Yeah, the finale with the game station is...
Yeah, a strong finale.
I like that they built up to it as well, and that's the kind of thing that I think season 12 missed out, where you've got this Bad Wolf episode, and then they get ported out at the end of Boomtown, and then it's not too much like build up, and you're straight into it. Whereas series 12,
I feel like especially the finale to series 12 problem is you spend 2 episodes setting up the Sideman plot, only for them to do nothing in the final story. It just feels like you've been wasting your time watching
nothing,
it.
Yeah. They're just there in the background.
They do nothing. It's like all of a sudden the Master just comes, and then all of a sudden the story just goes in a complete different direction.
Yeah. And you've got this whole bizarre thing with the Time Lord Cybermen or whatever, and it just leads to nothing whatsoever.
The Time Lord Cybermen don't do anything. They just stand around.
They just sit there, and then they're gone a few minutes later.
Yeah, it's a very poor finale, because it's very weirdly structured. Like, if you wanted to, I don't think the idea of essentially the Master just explaining the Doctor's new Wikipedia page is a good idea for an episode. But even if you were going to do that, I don't know why you just would make that like a standalone thing. Why you had to have the Doctor be in a Cyberman episode, and all of a sudden there's
Cyberman, there's the Master, and there's the whole
just
canon being...
Yeah, the Master just kind of comes in and just derails this episode. It's like, oh, we're doing this now. What happened to the Sideman plot? That just goes nowhere. And
it's odd, isn't it? Because it also adds kind of, if the Doctor was able to infinitely regenerate, why was the Trenzalore thing even a thing? Why did he need to be given another regeneration cycle?
Yeah, it's all very weird. It does contradict a few things. I think what some people have said is that they put the regeneration limit on the Doctor when they had the Doctor regenerate into William Hartnell and wiped the memories. They set the limit on the Doctor, and then it's only now that the limit is gone. When they gave the 11th Doctor the new cycle, it was like an infinite cycle. So I don't really know. It's quite complicated.
It's the same with... It's just... You shouldn't have to make assumptions like that and things.
Yeah, it's like with
in writing.
It's like with the Roof Doctor. Like, it's implied,
and there's no explanation.
Hartnell,
it's implied as to what's going on.
But she has a police box TARDIS, which obviously the first Doctor didn't have originally. And it's said in An Unearthly Child that the TARDIS only becomes a police box because it stuck around in 1963 London. So then why does Roof, who's a Doctor before Hartnell, have a police box TARDIS? It makes no sense. It's like, I think,
and the viewers just have to be made to assume it.
Yeah, exactly. And some people have said that, like, the Doctor's police box was always a TARDIS, and the reason it got stuck is because it was going back to what it was before. But it's just too complicated. I don't know why you need to explain that. And it's like, I thought, like, if someone was, like, getting into Doctor Who with, like they were thinking, I watched some episodes, I like Jodie Whittaker, oh, I heard there was some previous Doctors, how many Doctors were there? And, like, try explaining how many previous Doctors there were before Jodie Whittaker without
before you just say 12 or 11 or whatever the case may be, and then now it's just
try explaining it to them in a way that wouldn't completely put them off the show after learning it. They'd be like, well, that's just too complicated. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that the Timeless Child ruins, like, it contributes everything and also nothing at the same time. So it kind of takes away a lot from the Doctor.
It adds more questions and answers none. And while doing that, tears up, like, 60 years of canon or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the problem is that it does all this changes to the past, but it actually changes nothing going forward. Because there's even that scene where the Doctor says, I don't know who I am, and the Roof Doctor says, yeah, you do. None of this matters. You know who you are. So it's like, if that's the case, then all of this is essentially pointless. It doesn't affect the Doctor. So why do it? It's the Timeless Child.
And you do all of that, and it doesn't matter. It's just
exactly. It's got no importance going forward. Like, I can't see how much story potential you can get out of that going forward. It just feels to me that Chris Chibnall always wanted to do this when he was younger. So he just did it, and he did it,
and he hasn't actually put any thought into where it's going to leave the series.
No, it always feels like he wanted to do it, and he didn't really care what it had to take for him to get to that conclusion, as long as he got to that conclusion. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Exactly, and it's I think the reason why he went for that is because you say in series 11, kind of like, you got the finale and you got the season, and there's not really any, like, high stakes, if you know what I mean. You've got the Battle of Ranstor Avkolos or whatever the case is. And and it's this tiny battle that's taking place on a completely other planet, and then Graham ends up doing whatever, and it's just like, what were the stakes on that? So he's done this season 12. And there's Gallifrey in the mix, and there's Cybermen, and he's tried to, buff it up a lot. And I think he's just missed the mark.
Exactly. I just feel that, like, especially the Timeless Children, it's such a boring episode as well. Like, not a lot happens in it. Like, I heard someone say that it's essentially like the Doctor. It's essentially the Master showing the Doctor a PowerPoint presentation, which ends with the slide, "You're adopted." That's all it is. Like, not a lot happens in it. It's just the Master just reading out, like, a Wikipedia page of the Doctor's new backstory.
Essentially, the whole kind of story, it's just CGI effects, isn't it? Yeah. And then what it actually leads to is
not a lot of plot happens. It's just the Master explaining this stuff to the Doctor, while some Cybermen just wander around and get blown up.
Yeah, and you can kind of draw comparisons in that respect to Hellbent.
Yes.
And, like,
Hellbent.
you bring in Gallifrey, you bring in, the episode before that, Heaven Sent.
Yeah, and it's just all about Clara.
It's all about Clara, yeah, and then you get this hybrid.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Don't get me started on the hybrid.
Yeah, and then there's that interview with Stephen Moffat. And they say, who is the hybrid? He says, the viewer figure it out. Like, the viewer figure it out. Jesus. What do you mean the viewer figure it out?
It's like you're too lazy to write an ending to your arc. So you're just like, well, you decide. It's like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do.
Is it Daleks? Is it me? Is it the Doctor? Oh, you figure it out.
I've heard a lot of people say it's supposed to be like the Doctor and Clara, but that doesn't even make any sense, because that's two people. So it's not a hybrid. Like,
yeah, it's absurd, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know which arc is worse, the hybrid or the Timeless Child, because at least with the Timeless Child you get an answer, whereas with the hybrid they just don't even tell you. It's just like, what?
Yeah. And then you have this whole situation with Clara off to face the Raven.
Oh, Jesus
I think it would have been easier easier. Never mind. if Clara just goes down and faces the Raven,
absolutely,
and then you move on with the series.
Yeah, I think it would have been like someone said. What would have been great is that the Doctor goes to Gallifrey, and there's a bit of a power struggle because obviously Rassilon is the president, but obviously the Doctor essentially saved Gallifrey. So, like, who do the people go to? Do they go to your actual president, who you know is a bit of an asshole, or the Doctor, who is like a renegade, but he saved you? Like, and you can
then you have the scene where everyone misses the Doctor, and I thought that was quite a good scene.
Yeah,
but,
and then you
it's the only good point of the episode.
Yeah, you could have had like the Doctor try to take back Gallifrey, but the thing is that does happen, but just like the first 20 minutes of Hellbent, and then it just goes into this Clara thing, and the Doctor's just to Rassilon, he's just like, get off my planet, and he just goes. It's like, well, what was the point of that?
And then the High Council's on the next ship, and they just go.
Yeah,
and it's like,
what
on earth is going
Especially
on?
after it being set up in Day of the Doctor at the end, you're like, oh, I'm so excited to see the return of Gallifrey. And it returns, it's just absolutely wasted, and obviously it's destroyed again now.
And now it's gone. Yeah.
So it's like,
and it's in this pocket, and then
it does kind of ruin. I'm not going to say ruin, because I still enjoyed it of the Doctor, but it does make that scene at the end where he's like, I've got a new destination to find Gallifrey, a bit pointless when you know it goes nowhere. And it's almost a bit weird that Moffat himself wasted his own thing that he set up. And then Chibnall, rather than trying to fix Hellbent, just went, oh, I'll just get rid of it. I guess it's a bit disappointing to see.
Yeah. And you think about this whole thing with fixed points, and in Face the Raven when Clara dies, and it's all a fixed point, and he gets extracted or whatever, and it's like we go on about fixed points for the whole series, like, and we have the situation in Series 6 where it freezes the universe, and then we have the thing in Angels Take Manhattan with the book, right, and then even in like Under the Lake and Before the Flood, when the Doctor's the ghost or whatever, and it's the hologram, and they're going on about these fixed points, and then we just throw it away in.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that bar Under the Lake Before the Flood, which I mean was in his era anyway, but like you mentioned, Series 6 and Angels Take Manhattan and stuff, those were written by Moffat, so it's like he's just going against.
He's going on about these fixed points. He just throws it away. And in Hellbent, he even says, "Oh, we're just going to fly out of the time stream," and there goes the fixed point. We're just going to fly out of the time stream.
Yeah,
and like, where was that? Where was that in Series 6 when
it kind of ruins the stakes as well, because it's like if anyone dies, just take them to Gallifrey.
Yeah,
obviously you can't.
Chip in them and then bugger off.
Obviously, you can't now, but
because
it's gone. But I just feel that he does a similar thing with Bill, is that he kills them in a horrific way, and then he just brings them back.
They're glass
and makes them immortal. And it's like he said in an interview that he thinks that Doctor Who is a hopeful show, and it's not the kind of show where people die. And it's like, I don't have a problem with that in theory, but if you want to have the happy ending, just don't kill them off. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't kill them off and then bring them back. Just don't kill them off in the first place if you don't intend to have them stay dead. Because it just undermines.
And he says that after basically killing off Amy and Rory in Series 7.
Yeah.
Which is,
I think Amy and Rory's departure is like the only, like, even half-decent departure that Moffat's written for a companion. Because I don't mind the Bill one, I don't dislike it as much as Clara's ending, but it does still have a bit of the same thing where, yes, Bill goes off and yes, Bill got converted into a Sideman, and that was horrific, but then she's gone off as an immortal puddle woman with her crush, and it's like, well, and now she's immortal to travel the universe, exactly what they did with Clara, making her essentially immortal and giving her a TARDIS. It's like,
with me and that.
And that completely diminishes the stakes of their death. I guess, if anything, that I hope we can at least count on with Ryan and Graham's exit is that if one of them dies, they stay dead. They don't just come back.
And there's not some kind of bizarre thing to bring them back this time. Yeah.
Exactly. At least that's one thing that I kind of have faith in Chibnall for. So I don't think he's going to do the whole Moffat thing where he kills them off and brings them back. I think if Ryan or Graham die, which I'd say is probably quite likely, I'm just speculating here, but I think that it's almost certain that they're not going to come back, which, like, they would stay dead.
Yeah, well, they're going to leave the series, you'd imagine, yeah. And I think it's going to be more likely, because you thought there was this moment where you would think that in Resolution that Graham was going to die, but yeah, hopefully they get some closure.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think it just diminishes the stakes when you know that people just can come back.
Yeah. And the way they got rid of Nardole as well was odd.
Yeah, I kind of like that, but then again, it's like, well, surely couldn't the Doctor just go back and save him?
It was like saying, yeah, just go away, go away, and we'll worry about you later in the episode.
I kind of like the understatedness of like his departure, that him and the Doctor just say goodbye and he just goes off. But then at the end of the day, the Doctor left him on a ship with approaching Cybermen. He's most likely dead. And it makes no sense that the Doctor wouldn't have gone back and saved him, technically. Which I guess is like one of the things that I kind of like.
I wasn't a fan of the design of the Cybermen in those episodes either, to be fair.
Which Cybermen are you talking about?
No, like the Bill Cyberman.
Oh, like the original Mondasian Cybermen.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I really like them, actually. So I just think like it kind of brings back the kind of body horror aspects, which I think makes the Cybermen a unique villain. Because obviously that's what they looked like. Those were the original Cybermen in the 10th Planet. And I just think...
I think maybe it's just because it's different to all the rest. Because since the season 2, you've kind of had the same base design.
Yeah, the kind of very robotic
It's more
Cybermen.
Modern design in season 7 and series 8. But yeah. I guess there's an argument for it.
How much classic Doctor have you watched, Max? Interesting.
I've watched basically none, actually.
But I've watched a fair bit, and I'd say certainly, especially in the 60s, the Cybermen are handled quite well in terms of they want to convert people rather than just kill them. Which I think has been quite annoying in the recent years, that the Cybermen just want to kill humans, especially in Series 12. Made no sense to me.
And even when they made the return in Series 2 in the parallel, they wanted to convert, right?
Yeah,
and then what happened to that?
I'd argue that Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel is the only truly great Cybermen story in the revival that really gets the Cybermen. I think
even in the same series, in Army of Ghosts, they're just gunning people down.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I think World Enough and Time is maybe the best Cyberman story ever, but then the Doctor Fools just kind of messes it up. So when they're just blowing up the Cybermen again, it's like you did all that great stuff with the Cybermen in the hospital, and now you're just going back to just blowing them up again, which is kind of the downfall of the Cybermen in previous stories. So and then obviously in this latest series, they just want to become robots. It's like, what? Like, that's like the complete opposite of what the Cybermen should be doing. Like, if you like, and also just because the Master points out that it's a terrible plan doesn't stop the plan for 3 episodes being terrible. That they just want to become robots. Like, that's another thing. You're building up the Cybermen, and then their plan is just, we want to become robots. It's like, I kind of feel like I've wasted my time getting invested in that story when it goes nowhere, and it's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess I think that because the Cybermen, with them converting people, and in a sense, they don't want to destroy the universe. They kind of want to preserve the universe, but in their heads,
species,
like, preserving the universe is making them into Cybermen because they're the strongest thing, which I think makes them so different from the Daleks who just want to kill everyone. Whereas I think when you make the Cybermen just kill people...
that's the dividing factor, and then when the Cybermen are just gunning people down...
They're the same as the Daleks, but just not as good.
Yeah.
Like in Series 2, they just get gunned down by the Daleks.
When there's that standoff between the Dalek and the 2 Cybermen, they just get dominated.
But because their plan isn't to convert, then you've got a situation where the Cybermen are just naff Daleks, like they're just B-Tech Daleks. And I think that's what's been going on for a few years now. And I think, like I said, in World Enough and Time, they got back to that, but then in Series 12, they've gone down the same route of the Cybermen just want to kill everyone. And I think with the cyber wars, it's like, why are cyber wars such a good idea to me? Is that technically, if you're humans, you can't win, because every single soldier you lose, the Cybermen gain a soldier because they've converted them. So, like, when your army is dwindling, the Cybermen army is rising because every single soldier you lose, they gain. So it's why
it's very difficult to win. Yeah.
Well, it makes the cyber war so interesting. But when you get the cyber war in Series 12, where like both sides are like diminished, it really doesn't make much sense. Like, why? And also, it makes no sense because if the Cybermen don't want to convert these humans, which they clearly don't, why are they bothering trying to kill them? Because they're hardly a threat for them. But they've got no technology. They're just on the run. So why are the Cybermen wasting their time trying to kill them? Because it would make sense if they were to convert them, but
because they've never wanted the extinction of humans, right? That's never been their motive. But all of a sudden, it is.
They rely on humans to survive. Like, without humans, you wouldn't have any Cybermen. And then obviously, in like those new Cybermen that wake up on the war carrier ship, like, it's highly implied that those Cybermen are purely robotic. So if that's the case, then what's the point? They're just Daleks. That just it completely misses the point of the Cybermen to me. It's just very. It almost feels like Chris Chibnall didn't have his heart in the Cybermen plot, and he just kind of had it just so.
He just kind of had it in his mind. He just wanted to run it out. And
run it out until he got to the Timeless Child idea, which he clearly was a lot more invested in.
Yeah,
I guess was kind of my problem with Moffat and the Daleks, in the sense that Moffat never truly felt that he was amazingly invested in writing Dalek stories. So if that's the case, just don't write Dalek stories, get someone else to write it, rather than write it yourself when you're clearly not amazingly invested in those characters.
He didn't do very many Dalek stories, did he?
He did about 3 he wrote himself, because Victory of the Daleks was written by Mark Gatiss.
Yeah.
So you've got Asylum of the Daleks, Into the Dalek, and Magician's Apprentice, The Witch is Familiar.
Which is Familiar, yeah.
Yeah, all of them aren't the best Dalek stories, and I think you can tell that he's not amazingly interested in the Daleks, because the Daleks are quite small parts of all of those stories, I guess, bar Into the Dalek. Like, Magician's Apprentice, Which is Familiar, is much more about Davros. And then Asylum of the Daleks.
The Daleks kind of Davros stories of the Doctor making Davros who he was. And,
the Daleks are just kind of there in that one. And then in Asylum of the Daleks, again, the Daleks are just kind of there. Like, they don't really have much of a presence in the story. So...
Victory of the Daleks was another... Did he write that? Did Moffat?
No, Mark Gatiss wrote it.
Yeah.
I don't mind Victory of the Daleks. I don't think it's a great story, because I watched that the other day, and I think, like, it's not a great episode.
It's not a top story.
No,
but...
it's even worse in hindsight, because the Paradigm Daleks ended up just being canned. Like, instantly. They introduced these new Daleks, and because of Backlash, they just got rid of them so quickly.
And they were in Pandorica Opens.
Yeah, they're in Pandorica Opens, but like...
And then they get wiped out with the Big Bang.
Yeah, and then... By the time you get to the next Dalek story, Asylum of the Daleks, it's mostly the Bronze Daleks again. So it feels like a setup story without any payoff, because they just went against... Like, they clearly had big plans, because they went all in on the redesign of the Daleks, but then with the slightest hint of backlash, they just instantly backtracked and got rid of them. Which I think is a shame, because I don't know if you've seen any of the concepts that were for the Paradigm Daleks, but... Like, they had, like, a weapon, like, and they could swap out the weapons on their casing and swap them out for different weapons which were hidden in the back, and they're supposed to have
it'd be nice to see,
weapon in the back.
As we've seen the Cybermen vary a lot, but the Daleks, they got to stay as this same bronze shell.
I think they clearly had big plans for the Paradigm Daleks. I would have liked to have seen where they went, but obviously they never did, because they got rid of them. I would agree that, they keep on redesigning the Cybermen, but the Daleks have just stayed the same. I think even, like, a different colour. So I don't know if you know in the classic series, like, the Daleks were relatively the same design, but they changed the colours on them. So I think that would be okay, like, just give the Daleks, just freshen them up a bit. But I don't even think you need to change the design. You just change the colours, just give them a slight bit of difference, just to make them feel a bit different, because they have, like, and these Daleks have been practically the same for 15 years.
Yeah, it's been the same since the restart, and then we vary them once, and it instantly goes back. And you have these huge breaks where there's no Dalek stories as well.
Exactly.
And you think in that time you can do something, you can get a new design, you can do something like that. So yeah, you don't have a Dalek story in season 10. Like the Witch is familiar, and then it goes all the way to Resolution.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no don't even get me started on Resolution.
I don't like Resolution either. I really don't like it, which is weird because a lot of people quite like it. But I remember it's quite funny when that ended. I was like really angry, and I've never been angry.
I remember,
from after a Doctor Who story before that, and I was a bit angry after the Timeless Children recently. But before that, I'd never been angry, and even my parents were like, "Oh, it wasn't as bad as some episodes in Series 11. Why are you so angry?" But I just couldn't stand Resolution, and it is quite weird. But I do feel that it always feels like every few years they just make a Dalek story out of obligation, and not because they actually want to make one. So I feel like at least with the Rusty Davies Dalek stories, you felt that they were making a Dalek story because they wanted to make a Dalek story, because they felt that there was something they could do with them. Whereas in the Moffat era, and I guess it's kind of continued into the Chibnall era, it just felt like they made Dalek stories for the sake of, you have to make a Dalek story because they're the Daleks.
Yeah, and you've got to do one every once in a while, and they don't really have any content. And you can even tell that in Resolution, because you've got this idea of this one weakened Dalek trying to get back and trying to communicate, and that's already been done with Dalek in season 1.
Exactly. I think one of the problems with Resolution is that whole one Dalek idea only really works if it's in like a closed environment. So when you've got it out in an open environment in various different locations, it's very hard to feel the threat of the Dalek, because it's not really doing much. Like in Dalek, it's the perfect setup where you're in a base under siege and the Doctor and co can't get out, and you're just stuck there with that Dalek. The Dalek can pick people off. But in Resolution, where the Dalek's just in all these different places, you don't really feel that too much of a sense of threat, because the story
there's not the sense of urgency.
No, the Dalek doesn't stay in any place long enough to make it feel like a threat. Like the Dalek doesn't really do much in that story. The Dalek just journeys around places getting different weapons, and then the Dalek gets the weapons and is immediately defeated with a microwave. So
microwave, yeah, exactly. And it's such a cheesy ending. And you think normally in these specials you've got this sense of urgency, like you've got Voyage of the Damned, and you've got Last Christmas, and you've got specials like this where there's a sense of urgency and there's a crisis that has to be solved, and you just don't see that anymore with these finales and these Christmas specials.
Exactly, and I think you can certainly tell the lack of interest for the Daleks when you think of the last time the Daleks were the main villains in a series finale was Series 4.
Yeah, exactly.
In 2008, and it's 2020 now, and whereas the Cybermen...
And that's the thing they should take some inspiration from, is when you look at Series 1 and Series 2 and Series 3 and Series 4, you have these finales where you've got high stakes, like Parting of the Ways and Bad Wolf, you have the Daleks coming in, and even if the Series 2 finale wasn't so great, like you've got Daleks and Cybermen coming in.
Yeah.
And you've got these high stakes, this sense of urgency, and it's got to be different from the rest of the series in some way, because it's the finale.
Exactly. I feel that...
And that's where Series 11 certainly went wrong.
Oh yeah, Series 11. Battle of Ramsgrave Colossus was just essentially any other episode.
It's just an episode, isn't it? And you have this whole thing with Graham at the end, and you think you've come to the end of this story arc with Graham, and it's the main story arc for the finale.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's going on there?
It takes you away, like when he confronts Grace and decides to leave her. You kind of feel like that arc's kind of done. Like Graham's got over his grief. They've called each other granddad, and then in the next episode, he's immediately like, "I want to kill Tim Shaw," and it's like, whoa, where did this come from? I thought he's got over his grief, but all of a sudden he hasn't. And certainly.
And this Tim Shaw is such a weak villain for the
especially for a returning villain as well. Like, there's just nothing to him. It's like he's only back just because he was in the.
He was there in the first episode of the series. He was almost no threat whatsoever.
I didn't mind that though, because like the first episode, you're always going to have a slightly weaker villain.
Yeah, that's fine. And just because also it's the first after a regeneration.
Exactly, so your focus is on the Doctor, so the villain's always going to be weaker. But it's
he's been cast away from the TARDIS or whatever. So you got to. And why is it coming? Why can't they just get rid of it in that episode with the Grey Suit?
I feel I feel Tim Shaw, he's okay for the Women Who Fell to Earth, but when he comes back,
it comes to a finale, it's not a character worthy of a finale.
He's not a strong enough character.
Like, there's nothing to him, and he poses barely any threat.
I feel like that's true for a lot of villains in Series 11, though. I guess that one thing they certainly improved on in Series 12 was the villains. That even if the Lone Sideman ultimately doesn't really do much, at least he has a bit of a threatening presence. The same with the Master, who I guess was the big one. Like, he really brought out a lot of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, which we hadn't seen in Series 11. And he just posed a threatening presence. So he was just a villain that the Doctor could play off of, which you didn't really have with someone like Tim Shaw in Series 11.
Yeah. And even like the villain from like Can You Hear Me, that would have been better for a finale, right? Because he's a proper villain. He's posing a danger
because he's so good, but he's like barely in that episode. It's like,
and he plays a small part of the episode, and he gets
you could have done so much more with him because it's such
this kind of absurd move.
Yeah, it doesn't even make any sense, but it's such a good performance. He could
and
be
he's
like
done a great job,
a returning villain,
actor and everything. He could be a returning villain.
I'd like to see him again in Series 13 in like a story that revolves more around him. I think that'd be great. I think Series 12, even though I don't think it was an amazing series, there are certainly positives to take in the sense that it was improving on Series 11. I guess in some ways, even though The Timeless Children really left me cold, I feel that I am slightly optimistic for Series 13 because I feel that the criticisms people had of Series 12, they will take on board for Series 13, which I guess is good.
I also like they got a good proper two-parter in there, which we haven't seen in a while, with Spyfall.
Yeah,
which
Spyfall was good.
A good proper two-parter. You got Nicholas Tesla's Night of Terror, which is one of the best episodes in the series.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's a top-drawer episode.
I'd say that is the best. I say that and Spyfall were highlights of the series. I really enjoyed those two.
I think in terms of even the last 5 years, it's definitely up there. It's definitely
I'd say
it's
probably the best outright historical story since Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Because you kind of have this scene of this old character, and he's got a strong storyline, and it's a fantastic episode.
It is. I almost think it's a bit underrated because a lot of people have been talking about like Fugitive of the Jadoon is a really good episode, but to me, I just don't really see what people saw in that one. Whereas Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, which not a lot of people were raving about, I just thought that's a tremendous episode. And I think also it's kind of the episode where I really felt that Jodie Whittaker had become the Doctor. Because, with Capaldi, it took me until Mummy on the Orient Express for me to really feel like he's the Doctor. In the sense that I had that story where I felt like this story really suits that Doctor and wouldn't be better with another Doctor. So with all of the Jodie Whittaker episodes up to that point, even though I did really enjoy Spyfall, I guess that was kind of, the seeds were sown. But I feel that, like any of those stories, I felt that would have been a better story with Matt Smith or David Tennant. Whereas with Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, I just thought this story really suits Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. And I just felt she was really good in that story.
A good success,
I hope that writer comes back. I can't remember the name of who wrote it, but I hope she comes back to write again in Series 13 because it was a very good historical episode. I feel like it almost took what works about Rosa and made it better. Because a lot of people like Rosa. I think it's a decent story, but I think there are a couple of flaws in it. But I think it takes parts of that works and makes a better story.
Yeah, I thought Rosa was the standout episode of Series 11. Or at least one of the best. And The Witchfinders, I thought that was a decent episode as well.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Witchfinders, but I can see why people liked it. I think it was a decent story. I'd say for me, Woman Who Fell to Earth remains kind of the best episode of Series 11 for me, and I quite like Kablam as well, when I thought Rosa was decent. I feel maybe where Rosa goes wrong, and it almost seems like a bit of a silly thing to say, because it has very little bearing on the story, but I just think when they start playing the Rise Up song, it just kind of diminishes the episode, because it almost becomes a bit cheesy, whereas before it wasn't like that. Like, it was very like hard facts, this is what racism was like, and then in that it starts playing the music, and I almost feel it would have been stronger if there was no music at all, and you just had to watch the scene play out silently, like you were Graham on the bus, and you were just watching it play out silently, and it felt like it was going on a while, and you just wanted it to end like you would have been if you were Graham sat there on the bus. Like, it would have felt like a horrible thing to watch. Whereas when you play the Rise Up music, and then the Rise Up music plays throughout the ending credits as well, I just feel like it kind of takes something away from it takes something away from that experience, which I thought from that before that I thought it was a really good episode, and it kind of feels like a strange criticism because it doesn't really have any bearing on the plot,
and it kind of adds to, you know how they have people insulting when they announce the companions for even Series 10 and Series 11, where you have these LGBT characters and you have this black character and all the rest of it, and they say, oh, they just want to check all the boxes. And I think that episode was a place where they didn't really help themselves, which is a completely unfair criticism, by the way. Because I think, but it was a point where they didn't exactly help themselves in that respect.
I think it almost felt like, because it almost felt like when they played the Rise Up song, it almost broke the fourth wall, where it was like, it was kind of like them essentially revealing why they wanted to tell the episode story, whereas just letting the story play out on its own terms, rather than trying to link it back to current day issues, which it already did in the storyline, because it's about racism. It very clearly linked to present day issues, so I don't really know why you had to play this song and really hammer home that this links to present day, and it's
just rub it in.
We kind of already got that.
Got the point.
I feel like up until that, the actual racism plot and how it links to present day, I think is actually handled quite well. But I think then when it is weird, because it does break the fourth wall, when it's like kind of the real world stuff coming in, and it's like, this is why we wrote this episode, to link to the racism campaigns. And you know, while I don't necessarily have an issue with them writing the episode because of that, I just feel like, just let the story play out naturally. I felt like the song was kind of forced in a bit, really. I almost feel like with Nikola Tesla, it has a similar message which it does with Rosa Parks, which is that person changed the world. They may have not had a great life, but they changed the world in the long run, which is obviously the main message at the end of Rosa and Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. But I just feel it's handled a lot more. It's handled better in Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. Where, you know,
certainly in the way that you don't have to state the obvious on everything that's taking place. Sometimes it can be kind of interpreted.
And you know, the Doctor just said, like, Yaz is like, oh, now maybe he'll, you know, change the world, and the Doctor's like, no, he dies penniless. Like, his life isn't great, but he does change the world infinitely for the better. Which they do a similar thing with Rosa, but I think when you show the real life footage of Rosa and you show the asteroid named after Rosa, and you're playing the Rise Up song, it just almost feels like it breaks the fourth rule, and it kind of ruins the flow. It wasn't necessary
story. You could have just ended the episode there. And it would have been fantastic.
I don't mind the Doctor saying like, Rosa changed the world and stuff, but I just feel when you've got like essentially the last like 10 minutes going on about how great Rosa Parks is, and yes, Rosa Parks was amazing, but I don't know, it's just something about it which I think that it kind of ruins the drama of the episode, because rather than have a scene that is clearly horrible with what they're doing to Rosa Parks, it kind of, rather than watching it out as a drama, it becomes, I don't really know how to describe it, but it just takes away something from that story, I think. When it becomes slightly cheesy, when I think it would have been so much more effective.
It doesn't fit in great when you've got this kind of Doctor who's light-hearted, who's, you know, she's not this dark character yet, and it just doesn't feel right in that context.
No, I think
you know, you got this story in, like, you know, in Human Nature and Family of Blood, where you kind of find out what happens when you cross the line with Tennant.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just doesn't fit in quite right.
It's quite a weird story for, like, the Doctor's third story. It's kind of it's very strange, but I just feel like up until that point, I really enjoyed Rosa and its depiction of racism and its whole storyline. But then when you start playing the song, it almost becomes less of a drama and more of, like, it just becomes a bit cheesy, and I don't think they particularly handled that very well. And that's why I think
people say it's not Doctor Who's place to be making obvious political points. Like, they've already made this point for the whole episode, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to add to that by putting that bit in.
Yeah, that
was kind of the people's points.
Yeah, I feel that, as I said, I enjoyed the episode and I enjoy how it tackles racism. But I just feel that when you add the song in, it is slightly breaking the fourth wall, and it's becoming a celebration of Rosa Parks rather than depicting what happened to Rosa Parks, if you know what I mean. It becomes less of a drama and more of a, today we're learning about Rosa Parks, and this is what she did. And while I know Doctor Who has had a history of being educational, I just feel that there's a way of educating someone through the story rather than just telling them at the end, which is weird because the episode does both. I think it does a really good job of, like, educating you on what happened with Rosa Parks without it feeling like a school lesson, and then at the end it just all of a sudden just jumps to,
feels like the kind of thing you'd watch on YouTube to do your homework, right?
Exactly.
History or something.
It's always
like that.
weird because it's like,
doesn't feel like a Doctor Who episode.
It's just that last few minutes that kind of diminishes it, which I think is why Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror works so well, because it educates you quite a lot on Nikola Tesla. I knew barely anything about Tesla going in, and then I left feeling like I knew quite a lot about Tesla.
Yeah,
it does it in
it's
a way
educational,
where it weaves it into the storyline.
And it links into the story very well. Yeah.
Exactly. I feel that maybe that was slightly something that I don't think they did super well in The Haunting of Diodati. Is that because I was thinking about this, and that I know who, like, Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and Percy Shelley are, mainly down to what we had to do for English. But if that episode aired when I was younger, I would not know who the hell these characters were, and I don't think that episode does a great job. I don't think it does a great job of
making that entirely clear. Yeah.
No, it doesn't really introduce them. It just kind of goes in with you, like, expecting you to know who they are. And while that worked for me because I knew who they were, and I presume the same for you, if I was younger, I would have been quite confused because it doesn't really...
It's one of those that you could find quite confusing.
Yeah, if you were younger, you didn't know who they are. Whereas with Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, it really, like, it does a good job of telling you who Tesla is, which I think it works really well. Are you excited for Series 13, Max?
I am quite. We had this kind of moment of silence where we stopped ranting about Rosa, but yeah, exactly. I want to see Series 13. I want to see where I want to see where it goes with just the Yaz, because he's kind of been led out as the dominant companion now, obviously in Series 12.
She certainly had a lot more to do than she did in Series 11.
She's had a lot more screen time. Yeah, and they've kind of been getting ready for this, so I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see if they do something more with Captain Jack, or if they kind of build that relationship, or if he even appears in Series 13. But that'll be good to see.
Yeah,
I also hope, minor rant here, that they don't give us another 10-episode season, right? Yes. That they give us a 12 or a 13.
Absolutely, because I think I watched a video on this and someone said essentially there's only 4 episodes in Series 12 which isn't related to the arc. And I think it's quite dangerous
when you've got 55, you've got Night of Terror, you've got Can You Hear Me, you've got Praxeus, and the rest of them
are all linked into the arc in some way.
Or they're linked into the arc. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got I remember seeing like the trailer for episode 8 when I was watching episode 7, and it was like the finale starts next week. I was like, what do you mean? It's episode 8. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's like, it starts in episode 8, really, the finale.
Yeah, it's terrible marketing, because all throughout the series, the BBC were just like, it's only so-and-so episodes until the finale. And it's like that. It's a very weird way to market it, but essentially saying people who see it, yeah, this episode's not really important, just wait until the finale when the good stuff happens. And it's kind of like, that's a very weird way to try and market your show. Like, sure, you should be advertising this episode rather than saying, oh, it's, just get through this episode until you get to the good stuff. I thought that was kind of quite weird.
Yeah, and it's even disappointing because, as we know, in my opinion, season 11, the finale is poor.
It is quite poor,
is dreadful. And series 12, obviously, we got these major problems with it. And we've got 10 episodes in a season.
Yeah.
So I think even in Capaldi, where he had the problem with filming or whatever the case may be, we've got 12 episodes to a season.
You still at 12.
And I think that's a good amount, 12 and 13.
Yeah, I think 13 ideally, but even 12.
Yeah, you want to have the 12 or 13.
Yeah, I think especially it's hard because on one hand, I really want there to be more 2-part stories, but then on the other hand, you've only got 10 episodes a series. So
yeah, you want to have, because you can't really have 2-parters a season and then a finale. Because that's the whole season.
That's like that's like half of your series, if not more. So
and already we've had over half the series being overall plot related. And even when you had Moffat, you had this massive overlaying plot throughout the whole of Smith with the silence and Trenzalore, but you'd only hear about it twice or 3 times a season, and the cracks.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was well threaded in.
I feel like the cracks especially was such a good way to thread in an arc, because
it's fantastic, yeah. And even the cameo that they make in the God Complex, even. It's just fantastic.
I feel that in Series 5 especially, it's such a good medium of, whereas with the Russell D Davies arcs, the arcs weren't threaded in amazingly. Like, there were little hints in episodes, but it was kind of like, this is a thing, wait until the finale to find out what it is. Whereas in Series 12, Series 5, rather than say, there are these cracks, wait until the finale to find out what they are, you learn different bits about them across the series.
Yeah.
So they're introduced in the 11th hour.
And especially with the Rory thing, and then it's...
in Time of Angels, you then find out that they erase people through time, they erase people from time, and that an explosion caused it. Then in Hungry Earth, Cold Blood, it's revealed that explosion that caused it was the TARDIS. And then also,
and even Vincent and the Doctor plays a part in it.
Yeah, and then in The Pandora Opens the Big Bang, rather than we're going to explain what the crack is, it's more of you're watching the events that you knew were going to happen unfold, and it kind of paints a story around the idea of the crack. It's very cleverly done. I'd say that's kind of the best arc we've had, personally, because it gets a happy medium of the more understated Rusty Davies arcs, and not getting so convoluted and intertwined that you got with the Series 6 arc. I think Series 5 is almost the best way to do it, and I think that's kind of the model that Chibnall should have followed through.
I think Chibnall, because you kind of think about the Russell T Davies era, you didn't have these massive overhanging arcs over the series, right? Like, you kind of had the game station in Series 1 and the Bad Wolf in The Unquiet Dead.
Yeah, and Series 2,
and they were kind of lightly teased. And in Season 2, I'm not sure you really have a massive arc.
I think it's kind of
you have the Age of Steel and Rise of the Cybermen.
Yeah, and I think there's
where it's teased in.
References of Torchwood throughout the series, but it's very subtle. Now, obviously, Series 3, which I'd say is probably the most in your face of the Russell T arcs, with Harold Saxon.
Harold Saxon, and
which
then
I think is
Return of the Daleks, and then the Lazarus Experiment, and it leads into it. And I thought they were very lightly done, the arcs, and I thought that was quite nice. And I think that's what Chibnall should take an example from.
Exactly.
Because the arcs aren't in your face. Like in Series 12, it's all over Fugitive of the Jadoon.
Oh, it's like can you even call that episode a story. It's just like various bits of setup for the finale that they just decide to put in there. Like, it starts off as a story and then it just goes into finale setup about halfway through.
And I think it's just disrespectful to the Jadoon, really, if you get what I mean.
They do. They've not
really, because in the they kind of have cameos of being this this guardian force, and especially in the Stolen Earth and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and then they come back, and it's just this dreadful story.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if their name's in the title, it's called Fugitive of the Jadoon, yet the Jadoon don't really do anything. And
they're just a background force in the episode. It's the same with the Cybermen in the Timeless Child. So
yeah, they're just kind of there to keep like the companions occupied, but they don't really do anything. But like, I'd be fine if that was just like a disposable villain, like you have the sniper bots in Series 11.
Yeah.
Like, they're just a throwaway thing, so I don't mind if all they're there is to keep the companions occupied. But then you've got the Cybermen here, and like, these are the Cybermen. Like, what are you doing to them? Like,
you've got the Cybermen and the Jadoon being used as props, which is just bizarre.
It is bizarre. It almost feels like the only reason they brought back the Jadoon is because they were from the Rusty Davies era. They're from the Rusty Davies era,
and they needed someone to be.
They
needed someone to be the villain to.
Yeah, almost, because obviously the Rusty Davies era is popular, and a lot of people have stopped watching the show since then. So they were kind of like a similar thing to the Johnson Master, where they were like, "You remember this from the Tennant era?
Yeah, everyone likes that era. We'll just
so
chuck it in to try and get some views on the Doctor.
Well, it's very similar to John Sims' Master. Although I think John Sims really good in that Capaldi finale. He doesn't really do much in the story. They kind of remove him, and it would be practically the same story.
It'd be the same episode, but he does do very well, yeah.
Yeah, he is great in it, but it's unfortunate that he's just underused.
Yeah, he appears in one of the best finales, I think, does John Sims, and then they bring him back.
What, in Series 3?
Series 3, yeah, I think that's a very good finale.
It is
Bring him back
finale.
in Utopia, and then
it's great.
And it's one of those, it's high stakes, and you've got this whole paradox machine
I think Sound of Drums, especially with like the Doctor and co on the run from the Master.
And you've got this whole Martha thing.
Yeah, I think Last of the Time Lords slightly lets it down in like the resolution, but even still, I think it is probably the second strongest finale we've had. I'd say the strongest finale is Pandora Opens Big Bang. That's actually my favourite story of Doctor Who ever. I just think it's perfect, in my opinion.
It's definitely up there. I do like that a lot.
I think, probably the three best finales we've had, I don't think any of the others really come close, is Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways, Utopia, Sound of Drums, Last of the Time Lords, and Pandora Opens Big Bang. I think
Journey Ends and Stolen Earth is certainly a good one, and I like how they bring everybody into it.
I think that story's good, but I think that it does get a bit cluttered with everyone there.
Yeah, everyone's there and everyone's doing things.
I think that the Daleks in the second part don't have an amazing amount to do, which is why I'd say it's probably not as good as the other three I mentioned.
They're just a tool to Davros and the Supreme Dalek.
Yeah, which I guess is probably why I wouldn't rate that quite as good as the other three I mentioned, but it's still good. You get like quite good finales like Stolen Earth, Journey's End. I think The Name of the Doctor is quite a good finale. And Word Enough and Time the Doctor Falls, although I think the second part is a bit I still think as a whole it's probably the strongest Capaldi finale easily.
Yeah, well it can't be held back because
and I think Dark Water, Death in Heaven is quite weak as well. Well, that has good ideas.
Yeah, I don't like how it's all based around Danny Pink as well. This is a series finale. This isn't some corny mid-series episode like the Caretaker.
I think the problem is that I never bought Danny and Clara's relationship so much that Clara would literally threaten the Doctor.
Go and threaten the TARDIS, right? And
I just don't buy it. I don't buy that she'd love him that much, because the relationship is just not sold to me in that series. But they kind of feel like they've just kind of met each other, and yeah, they're kind of on and off dating, but nothing serious yet. And then all of a sudden, she's like threatening the Doctor, and it's like, whoa.
With a TARDIS key and all that. And it doesn't really strike you earlier on in the series as this uber serious relationship.
Exactly. I think
in the Forest of the Night and Flatline.
Yeah, I think it could have been, but it's just not. Again, it's not threaded well enough across the series. It's not been done well. Yeah. No, it could have been handled a lot better.
And I think the name of the Doctor is just it's a completely different type of finale.
It is. It's very strange. I think that and the Wedding of River Song are both very different to any other finales we've really got.
Yeah.
And then you've obviously got the Battle of Ransgrave Collis, which is again quite different to any finales we've ever had, but for different reasons, just because there was no build up to that, and it felt like
I think that was a dreadful finale. I think it's probably the worst.
I don't know. I'd say that.
And I like what they did with Graham in the episode, but it shouldn't really still be going on by that point.
I say that I probably dislike the Timeless Children and Hellbent more. Just because I felt that the Battle of Ransgrave Collis, it wasn't great, but it was kind of inoffensive.
They did the episode okay. Yeah. But in the Timeless Children of Hellbent, you've got these huge mistakes.
It's just wasted. So much is just wasted. And there's law changes which just go nowhere and all this stuff. It's almost like Chibnall tried to make Hellbent again. And it involves Gallifrey again. Can we not have a finale with Gallifrey that's actually good? Is that impossible? There's just so mental that they both involve Gallifrey and stuff.
Chibnall's got a lot of these borrowed ideas if you really think about it, because you think about the Fugitive of the Jadoon and reusing them for this policing purpose.
And even Spyfall, it had elements of with the companions being on the run. That's essentially just Sound of Drums. And and the Master is somehow involved and stuff, and the Master pretending to be an incidental character we thought was good, but that's just straight up Utopia. So I think,
and Resolution, as we said, it's just Dalek. It's following the outline of the Dalek.
I think that's almost the problem with Chibnall, at least with Moffat. Even if some of his stories were crap and a bit directionless, at least you knew that he was a good enough writer to he had good ideas. Whereas with Chibnall, I don't even think he has that. His ideas are just kind of subpar.
We haven't seen anything. Well, we've seen Night of Terror, but he didn't write the episode.
No, he didn't write that.
That's the thing.
I'd say
we've seen Rosa, which was good, and we've seen these good episodes, but we've not seen any quality, consistent, original stories.
I'd say there are only really two stories that Chibnall's written for Doctor Who as a whole, which I'd say are genuinely good ideas behind them. I'd say I'd say one of them's The Power of Three, which isn't an amazing episode, but I think the concept behind it is really good. The fact that these cubes come out of nowhere and they just do nothing, and I think that's a really clever idea from Chibnall. I think
he explored an idea pretty well.
And for once, it's not an idea which is just kind of generic. That's actually a clever idea that he's come up with there. I'd say another one is the second half of Spyfall, where it's kind of like that chase with the Master through time. I think that's another good idea with Chibnall.
That was a fun idea.
I'd say those are the only two episodes that he actually wrote, which I can genuinely say have a really good concept behind them that isn't kind of either generic or reused.
Yeah, I quite like Praxeus a bit. I think Praxeus is a good story. I don't know if he wrote that episode.
He didn't write that episode.
Of course he didn't.
No, the writer of Kablam wrote that episode, I think.
Now we're talking about it, it becomes quite clear. So his main kind of episodes are kind of borrowed concepts. And then the stand-up episodes of the series he didn't write.
Exactly.
That's kind of funny.
It is. Yeah. I think it's quite telling that... I think the thing is with Chibnall is I don't think he'd be terrible in a head writer role, but in a head writer role where he doesn't actually write stories.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the classic series, the head producer wouldn't write the stories.
Yeah.
Because the showrunner was kind of split between two people, the producer and the script editor. And they kind of collaborate, but the script editor...
And the producer would kind of be looking over the whole thing,
the script editor was
how it's executed.
Yeah, the script editor was write some episodes, but the producer wouldn't. Which I think that Chris Chibnall would be good in a role where he he plans the series, but he doesn't write the individual episodes, because I
think him writing one or
writer.
two episodes I don't think he's capable of being writing a whole season. I think that's part of the reason why they've got 10 episodes a season.
I think also maybe that's one of the reasons why Series 11 wasn't so good, because the first 5 episodes were all written by Chibnall, except Rosa, which he co-wrote. So, and that's probably why it felt so kind of like flat, because the concepts he was coming up with just weren't amazing.
I don't think he's decent enough to be writing a full series. That's the honest opinion. I think he's the kind of writer who we want to write an episode here and there, maybe 1 a series, 2 a series, and then he can come up with original ideas and put a lot of work into them. But when he's writing 7 or 8 episodes, it's obviously not gone well. Because you look at viewership and you look at all these things, and he's not done a good job.
I think one of the main problems was that in the Rusty Davies era, Moffat was like the standout writer. Like the stories he wrote were just incredible. But in Moffat's era, there wasn't really that writer that was like a standout writer where you'll think, yeah, they should take over as showrunner. So I think the BBC just kind of went for a safe pair of hands, which is what they kind of got with Chibnall. But as a result of that, his actual writing quality, it's quite a safe but
his content
series.
Has suffered by the fact that he's writing 7, 8 episodes, 10 episodes. I think his content has suffered a lot.
It has,
because you've got these recycled episodes, which we've talked about, and the episodes he does write, the standalone stories, are kind of the poorest episodes of the season, if we're being honest.
I'd agree. Especially,
did he write Can You Hear Me, I'd wonder?
He co-wrote that. I think
a
lot of the ideas were from a different writer, and then he just wrote a couple of bits in it. I think especially when you look at Series 11, you look at episodes like the Saranga Conundrum and Resolution and Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, I guess. You know, those are all written by Chibnall and were the weaker episodes of that series.
The Saranja Conundrum, that's not a good episode.
Whereas you look at probably the better episodes were probably, I'd argue, Kablan and even Rosa. That mainly came from Mallory Blackman and stuff. So, and those weren't really written by Chibnall.
I kind of like the concept of the Ghost Monument.
I just feel that not a lot really happens in it.
It's just this walk, and you've got these sniper bots, and
I think for you look at most episode 2s where you've got new companions, and the first episode is centered on the Doctor, and then the second episode is where the companions really shine. You look at stories like The End of the World for Rose, and then The Beast Below for Amy, but then in that, you don't feel like you know the companions any better. So it's kind of like a wasted opportunity.
It's just an episode where you're running away from snakes and sniper bots. There's not much character development.
There's not really much story either. They go on
and they find the TARDIS at the end, and it's just they're just pushing this random plot point.
Yeah, it feels like couldn't have you just had the TARDIS at the end of the first episode, because the Ghost Monument kind of feels like a really pointless story just to see the TARDIS when you could have just cut that whole.
You kind
of
just had the TARDIS already, and then kind of played that a little bit differently. But
exactly. I think that Chibnall, while I don't think he's a bad writer, I just don't think he's a strong enough writer.
I don't think he's decent enough to be a main writer.
No, I think, like someone said, he's not like a visionary. He doesn't really have a great creative vision for something.
Yeah, like Russell Davies and Moffat, where they're having a big overhanging vision, and they've got all these ideas, and they're actually acting them out. Whereas Chibnall, you kind of get the impression he's just trying to limp in and kind of keep going.
Yeah, you can kind of sum up the visions for both the Rusty Davies era and the Moffat era, but we've had 2 series of Chibnall, and I still don't really know what his vision of Doctor Who even is. How do you sum up those 2 series? I just don't know, because they're both so different to each other as well. One series has no 2-parters, no returning monsters, is very standalone and wants to try and get new viewers in. And the next series has all these returning monsters, and
you've got this massive overhanging arc and this massive stakes finale.
And it has a lot of emphasis on the lore and backstory of the Doctor. It's like two completely different series, and if you joined on from Series 11, you'd probably be put off by parts of Series 12.
And it'd be interesting to see where he goes with Series 13.
I almost feel like it'll be a bit of a middle ground between the two.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a pattern.
I think what's likely is there's a big Dalek story in there, because again, we've gone quite a distance without one. I think it's likely we see a big two-parter involving the Daleks, whether that's the finale or whether it's earlier in the series.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably more likely to be the finale, because obviously the special's got Daleks in it, so it'd probably be quite unlikely that they'd have kind of two Dalek stories in a row. So
I think what I'd like to see as well is a Weeping Angel story, because we haven't had a Weeping Angel story since...
technically since Angels Take Manhattan.
Since Angels Take Manhattan. I mean, they make that cameo in...
Time of the Doctor and
Hellbent. In Hellbent, yeah.
But technically it's weird, because the Angels feel like they've had more stories than they actually have, because they've only really had 3 stories.
But they've had 3 stories, haven't they? They've had
Time of Angels and Angels Take Manhattan.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd like to see a new story with Angels, but I almost feel it's unlikely, because obviously they were Moffat's creation, and they were only ever written in stories by him. So it is kind of unlikely that they would appear again. But
you wouldn't want to see Chibnall kind of butcher an episode with
but I'd like to see someone take like a stab at maybe doing something a little bit different with the Angels.
Because that 2-parter in Series 5 was a fantastic pair of
brilliant.
episodes.
I actually think that's better than Blink, personally.
I would agree with you. Yeah.
A lot of people say that Blink's the best, and while I think Blink is great, also I just think that 2-parter in Series 5 is just something else. Like it's just
like when you have 2-parters like that, you got to get them right, and that's where they've done well. And like you have these Series 9 where it's full of 2-parters, and I think
they did not a lot. They don't really do much with the whole 2-part format in Series 9. Which is, I think, a bit disappointing, because
I think they did some of them well. I think they did Under the Lake and Before the Flood.
I'd agree. I think that was a very good story.
In the series.
It's one of the best Capaldi stories, I think.
I think it's definitely top 5 Capaldi story.
Yeah.
And, Witch is Familiar and Magician's Apprentice. It did what it was attempting to do, you could say that.
Yeah, I think
it brought Misty and it brought Davros.
I think it's flawed, but I do like the Davros stuff in it.
And I don't know about the Zygon.
I think the Zygon one kind of works. I think it is quite heavy-handed with the ISIS stuff, but I think overall it works as a story.
And you got this great speech in the Zygon inversion. And I think that kind of saves the 2-parter.
Yeah.
But
I think I would an interesting point you brought up about Under Lake Before the Flood, because the writer of that story, Toby Whithouse, I kind of wish became showrunner over Chris Chibnall, because he's written School Reunion, Vampires of Venice, God Complex, A Town Called Mercy, and Under Lake Before the Flood.
You look at those episodes that he's written, you can't find a single one which is, you think it's a below par episode.
Yeah, like even Vampires of Venice, which I thought was a bit of a meh episode. I watched that a few days ago in my marathon, and that actually surprised me of how good that story actually is. So, I think also the concepts of these episodes, especially like the God Complex and Under the Lake Before the Flood, are very like high concept episodes.
Yeah.
And I think you could certainly see that he'd have a good creative vision for the show.
He seems like a good creative writer, and he seems like someone who could, put a series together. Exactly. Whereas you look at Chibnall's past experience, you look at The Power of 3.
Yeah, and Dinosaurs on the Spaceship, 42, 100 of Cold Bloods. Like, none of those episodes are amazing.
They don't strike you as, they just strike you as things that are going on. Like, you got cubes on Earth, great. And I wouldn't come up with that.
I wouldn't say any episodes he wrote before becoming showrunner were terrible, but I don't think any of them were standout.
I don't think they were.
They were just kind of meh. They were kind of like the episodes you'd forget about. Like
I think Dinosaurs on a Spaceship particularly was a good episode, but it's dinosaurs on a shapeship and it's cubes on Earth. Like that's not the kind of thing that you would think qualifies you.
I don't argue that Power of 3 has quite a good concept, but I don't think he really goes anywhere with it in terms of like the resolution is terrible.
I do like that episode. I do like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, but
Dinosaurs on a Spaceship is good. Is okay. I haven't watched that episode in ages actually, so I can't really remember like what I thought about it amazingly.
I thought it was quite a fun episode because you got Brian in it. And
yeah, Brian's brilliant.
He was a nice used character.
Yeah, I wish he was in it more. Like that he was in it earlier on, because he's only in 2 stories, which is disappointing. Because he's such a good character. It's kind of annoying that he just kind of came in just at the end. I wish they would have had that idea for him earlier on, because he doesn't appear at the wedding in the Big Bang.
Yeah, you would think he appears in the wedding.
Yeah, because obviously they didn't have the idea for that character.
They haven't thought of that ahead of time. Yeah. Maybe it's Chibnall's idea specifically.
Yeah, because he only appears in stories written by him. So I think it's kind of weird actually thinking about it in the Big Bang. Like they give Amy these parents and you just don't see them again.
Yeah. Well, you get the pretext in the 11th hour that her parents are gone, and you find that they've been taken through the crack, which is, this odd concept, and it's kind of odd you don't see them again after they've kind of been brought back in.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And especially like you have all these kind of scenes in Power of Three of like Amy living a normal life and Rory being a nurse or whatever. Why is there no scene of Amy with her parents,
Exactly.
That's the kind of thing
it is quite weird. That I guess that is one thing about Moffat's era. He brings in a lot of things that he just doesn't really follow up on.
Yeah. He tries to do so much. And, what he does focus on, I think he's done quite well in most. Well, we'll forget about Hellbent for now. What he does focus on, he does it well. But there's quite a lot of forgotten threads. Yeah,
exactly. I'd agree. And
it's kind of like the guy from Flatline coming back and Face the Raven as well. Like, that's the kind of thing they're bringing back.
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah. Whereas you could have brought more interesting stuff back through. Absolutely.
And they just choose this guy from Flatline who was kind of the tertiary character in the episode.
Yeah, like he was pretty good. Barely involved. He was pretty good, but like, do we really need to see him again? Like,
it's this graffiti guy who's in an episode a season ago.
He doesn't really do anything in Face the Raven either. So.
Well, yeah, he's just this clown who gets Clara killed.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded if he became a companion and got more like development.
Kind of like an Adam from Series 1.
Yeah, but because he doesn't get any development, it's just kind of like, well, why are you really here?
Yeah, if he's kind of been in the episode before that and got involved a bit, like what happens in Dalek and Adam.
Yeah, like I wouldn't have minded if he like maybe joined the TARDIS after Flatline and then became like a bit of a TARDIS trio with the Doctor, Clara, and Rixie. I think that would have been pretty interesting. I think that was almost what the Capaldi era was missing, like that kind of third character, because it got very toxic, just the Doctor and Clara. You know who I think should have actually come on thinking about it? Perkins from Mummy on the Orient Express. He should have became a companion. That really annoys me when the Doctor
I quite liked him as a character in that episode.
Yeah, exactly. He works really well with Capaldi. It's kind of a precursor to what they did with Nardole, like later on, I guess. That kind of relationship. I just think he should come on board. It always annoys me at the end.
I think he should have been there earlier, because that relationship with Nardole in Series 10 was so good.
Yeah, but it's just that's the problem with Series 10. Like, he's got a really good relationship with Bill, a really good relationship with Nardole, but the problem is that for most of Capaldi's era, he's just with Clara. And like that.
And I think he's being held back by that.
Exactly.
Character.
That's why I think in Series 10, and it's a few things. I think they finally get the characterization right with Capaldi, but I also think that when he's got a new companion, he just feels reinvigorated as a Doctor, and I almost feel that it's kind of like what Tennant's era would have been if he had Rose for 2 series. Whereas luckily he only had Rose for 1 series, so when he gets Martha and then Donna...
There wasn't that chance for Rose to become this massive character who was above the Doctor.
I think Rose holds his Doctor back in Series 2, but luckily she's only around for 1 series, so...
I think it's positive that he had a different companion for each series. I think that was...
Yeah, I think every single Doctor should at least have 2 companions, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of, like...
I'm not saying that they should only have a companion for a series, but having some different companions and mixing it up a bit is a thing that should happen.
I think what I would say is I think you should limit companions to 2 series.
Yeah,
I think
because Clara, what happened with Clara was just disgraceful.
yeah, I
I
think
think there's
also
no other word
Amy
for it.
and Rory, like I think that they had a good exit in the God Complex, and then they just come back for like the first 5 episodes of series 7. But I just think it would have been better for me personally if Amy and Rory left in series 6, and then you got a whole series with the Doctor and Clara, with
I
Matt
think
Smith
that was
and
kind
Clara.
of because, you know, you have Amy and Rory as these fan favourites, and they've been in so many good episodes. They want to keep them on for just a little bit longer until they can bring in Clara.
But I think by having then Clara for like only 8 episodes, it makes series 7 feel very weird as a series.
Yeah.
To like think of it as like one whole package, because the two halves feel so different from each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're separated.
I think
with
the whole
Christmas special.
Clara arc, to be honest, I think Clara was a character that was just managed quite poorly. Like, she appears 3 times before she comes into the series, right? In all these different formats, and we know now, obviously, that that's leading up to the events of the Name of the Doctor.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a bit odd what happened with Clara, and even if, I think she should leave in Mummy and the Orient Express, to be honest, because she's been around for 2 seasons. She says she's going to go, and she sticks around.
Absolutely,
and it gives chance for Capaldi to be built on some more.
Yeah, I feel so.
With maybe Bill and Nardole.
I think that's the problem with Capaldi. I certainly thought more positively of his Doctor in hindsight, because at the time, especially as I said with Series 8, I wasn't a big fan of his Doctor, but I think in hindsight, because I think they really got him right in Series 10, I appreciate him a bit more, but it's just a bit unfortunate that it's too little too late, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, everyone liked the way he acted, the way he carried himself, his attitude. Everyone loved Capaldi.
Exactly.
And then he's being held back by this Clara, and to a certain extent, this Missy and this Me, who just keep coming back over and over again, right?
It's ridiculous. I hate Me. Jesus
and it's
Christ.
Again with this, you've got this fixed point, right? And it's just being ignored.
Yeah.
And it's just and she's in 5 episodes of Series 9, is Me.
And she has no character. Like
no character, yeah. She's just this person who doesn't remember anything.
It's like, why should we care about her? Oh, she's played by an actress from Game of Thrones. Like, that's not a good enough reason to get an audience to care about a character. Like, you need to give her an actual
secondary character in Game of Thrones, and that qualifies her to appear in 5 episodes of the series.
Yeah. Are you not a fan of Missy then? Because you mentioned before that you felt Capaldi was being
Missy. No, I think Missy is great. I don't think she holds Capaldi back, but I think it's one of these things where, you know, you think about the Master, and he shows up every once in a while, right? And he's this great villain, or she's this great villain, is Missy, and I think she's used too much, maybe.
It's
I don't think she's a bad villain.
I'd argue that she's used too much, but then also used too little, in the sense that she's only really like the villain in Dark Water, Death in Heaven, and then after that she's kind of used as this weird kind of anti-hero, Deadpool-y type character, where they're a bad person but they're kind of likable, and she just has all these weird quips.
Kind of like this Punisher kind of character.
Yeah, and it's like she has all these weird quips and stuff, and it's just like Missy isn't really treated as a villain after Dark Water, Death in Heaven, which I think is why I struggle to really feel like she's the Master. And it's nothing to do with the gender thing. I just think it's how she's used.
Yeah.
Isn't really like as the villain, I guess. And I do like Michelle Gomez as Missy, but I think they could have used her as the villain a bit more, rather than like instantly make her. Like, I think they
needed to stop kind of changing it about. Kind of like she's this anti-hero, she's going to turn against him at the end of the arc or whatever. Just one or the other, innit?
Now, I don't mind like this arc of her redemption, but she just had to have been evil before that, and she doesn't really do much to really say, yeah, she's really evil. Like, she just doesn't have like amazing master plots. I think, like even Sacha Dhawan, I think instantly he's just so much more evil than Missy because he's been the primary villain of 2 stories, whereas Missy was only really the primary villain in 1, which. And
you get kind of that feel of evil from him, you know? And
exactly.
And with Missy, you have these 2 stories where, you know, she's just there, kind of, and she's not really the villain. So,
Yeah,
I think all these repetitive characters in the Capaldi era, like, you could have done without them.
Yeah, I think as well, it's just Moffat just kind of reusing his ideas, like at the start of Series 9, where it's like, I'm going to die, and it's like, didn't we do this in Series 6? Like, why are you reusing that idea? Yeah, I think that really held back the Capaldi era.
Yeah.
And
I think as an actor, he did very well.
Absolutely. I was watching a clip of World Enough and Time, at the end when it's revealed that the Sidemen is Bill. And Capaldi's acting in that scene is just phenomenal. I think he's one of the best actors to play the Doctor. Although I don't.
Yeah, that's what I've always said.
Although I'm not
he's
a fan,
maybe not necessarily had the best writing or the best
performance-wise, I think he always knocks out of the park. And I do feel a bit sorry for him because I just feel if his characterization was a bit more consistent, I'd really love him as the Doctor. But unfortunately, his characterization just kind of yo-yos.
And the kind of stuff he's had to deal with as the Doctor, like he went blind. That was fuming in Series 10, where he goes blind for half of the season. Right?
It's a bit of a weird thing to just throw in there, especially as it's his final season.
Yeah, and then you have this,
stuff.
and then you have this thing with the with this 3-parter where he's blind for half of it, and it
that Monk trilogy is terrible.
The Monk trilogy, I think the Monks could have been done well, but the blind Doctor and just this corny thing with the lab, I think it was terrible.
Yeah, it's not done too well, is it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's probably a good time to end it. We've been going for just under 2 hours.
Nearly 2 hours, isn't it?
I feel like we've had a good discussion about Doctor, a long discussion as well. I think we've covered a number of areas.
A lot of topics, a lot of rants.
just general Doctor Who chat, which is always good. I guess the good thing about a show like Doctor Who is there's so much to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about, exactly. And we barely scratched the surface.
Exactly, like we weren't just talking about the current show. We're talking about like older episodes as well, and
older seasons, and about arcs, and it's been fun, George.
Yeah, it's been great having you on, Max. Try and get you on again, because it's been really good having this chat. And it's been really good. Thank you for coming on and being
thanks for having me here. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks for being the first guest of the podcast. And see you later.